Hi everyone and welcome to the first ever podcast from Club Matt Productions. Awesome! I'm your host Matt Lloyd and welcome to the first of Is There Anybody Out There? So why now a paranormal show? Well, I've always had an interest in parapsychology and have carried out many paranormal investigations over the years as part of a group and also organised by myself as part of a small team. The idea behind this series of shows is simple. Once a month I will travel around the UK to an alleged haunted location where I will carry out a paranormal investigation. I will usually have a friend with me to assist in the investigation. I plan to record as much as possible on location and then record a show after the investigation to cover where we went, what alleged hauntings have been reported, and what we saw and experienced, or didn't see or experience, as the case may be. Okay, so a bit about me. I have a diploma in psychology, a diploma in higher education in nursing, where I studied some psychology and psychiatry. I have a level 2 certificate in parapsychology and also a diploma in parapsychology. I've been involved in over 50 paranormal investigations. Some of these were part of a group organised by another person, and others were organised by myself as part of a small team. I've attended around 7 different spiritual churches on a number of occasions, and I've had some readings with mediums. I consider myself both a believer and a skeptic, as I have witnessed things that I cannot yet explain, even with my interest in quantum physics. But I also believe that around 95% of reported paranormal experiences can be explained easily by science. The format of paranormal shows is simple. We'll start with the introduction as Ms. appears on this particular show. Then we'll go into a parapsychology lesson of the show, covering an area within parapsychology each show. Then we'll have an introduction into the paranormal investigation the show will cover, including where the location was, what paranormal activity has been reported there, the investigation we carried out, and what was witnessed if any activity was witnessed. This will involve a discussion with all the people who were present on the paranormal investigation, who will appear on the show as guests. Finally, we'll have any paranormal stories sent in by the viewers, followed by our contact details for listeners and viewers to send their paranormal stories or experiences into the show. So, when I was younger, I grew up in an allegedly haunted house, where a lot of unexplained things took place. The day my parents were due to view the house, it seemed that everything that could go wrong did go wrong. I was only 3 at the time, my sister had just been born, which is why my parents needed to move from a 2-bedroom bungalow into a 3-bedroom property. I do recall the night before we were due to move into the house. It was terrible. To this day I still can't recall whether it actually happened or was just a nightmare. I was in bed, asleep, in my bedroom, when I suddenly woke up and sat up in bed. A foam cream cushion chair suddenly started popping up from the end of my bed. It started shaking as it gradually got closer to me. At first, having just woke up, I was a little confused as to what I was seeing, but when it touched my foot and was still getting closer, I jumped out of my bed and headed to my bedroom door. Now I know, although I was only 3 at the time, that I had put my toy box away against the wall before going to bed. My parents always made me tidy up the toys before going to bed. It was a game they played with us. Anyway, so I ran towards my bedroom door and tripped over the toy box, which was now between the bed and the door. I picked myself up but couldn't get to the door. Then when I did get to the door, I couldn't get it open. I just remember screaming out for my mum and dad. And that's where the memory of what happened seems to fade away. The following day we moved into the new house without incident. It didn't take long for strange things to start happening in relation to the house. A lot of these events were told to me later by my parents, particularly my mother, as she spent most of her time in the house. My dad was an engineer and would work long hours during the week. Now, the first thing I remember my mother telling me was kettle incidents. When my mum took my sister with me in the morning to walk me to nursery, my mum would get back to find the kettle boiling. To start, my mum's thought must have stopped before she let take me to nursery, as the nursery was just at the end of our road, and it only took about 5 minutes or so to walk me there and back. However, it wasn't long before my mum realised that it wasn't right. Each time she got home from taking me to nursery, she would get home to find the kettle was boiling. She would turn it off at the socket before leaving for nursery and get home to find the socket turned on and the kettle boiling. Even when she unplugged it once, it appeared to be plugged in and boiling when she walked into the house. A few weeks after we had moved into the house, my mum would be in the downstairs hallway and see out the corner of her eye a group of Roman soldiers from the waist up, marching across the hallway, coming out of one wall and disappearing into the opposite wall. Every time she turned around to look at them, they'd simply vanish into thin air. As you can imagine, this was somewhat disconcerting, and to start with, my mum just put it down to seeing things due to tiredness, but wasn't convinced after she'd seen from the corner of her eyes for a second time. She experienced this for several more times over a number of years. When we first moved into the house, I recall my wallpaper being a pattern involving spirals, which were repeated as a pattern. My parents had to change the wallpaper soon after we moved in, as it used to keep me awake at night with the spiral patterns moving in a circular direction. It wasn't long before my parents got to know the neighbours and found out what really happened with the families behind the house. It appeared that none of the families that had previously lived at the house had ever moved out of the house as a complete family. I remember a chill going up my spine as my mum related this to me in a conversation she had with one of the neighbours who lived on the street for almost 30 years. According to that neighbour, every family that had ever lived in the house we were now living in had split up before moving out of the house. It seemed that no one family had ever lived in the house as a complete family for very long. Usually after a visit, the parents would end up splitting up. One would move out and either take the children with them or the children would stay in the house. And then a year or so later, the house would go up for sale. Luckily for us, my parents were both very strong-minded and genuinely madly in love with each other. So when we moved out of the house, we were the first family to move out of the house as a complete family. But the house didn't allow us to move out without a whole host of obstacles to overcome. Anyway, for the first few years I was blamed by my parents for moving things and hiding them, which I didn't, by the way. But things would go missing: my dad's wallet, my mum's car keys, books, just about anything that was small. The item would go missing from one part of the house and then turn up, sometimes hours later, sometimes days later, sometimes weeks later, or even months later, in a completely different part of the house. After a few years of denials, my parents finally believed that I had nothing to do with the disappearing items, especially as more and more strange things continued to happen in the house. Now, don't get me wrong, it was nothing like Poltergeist or other movies, although it came close to one occasion. It was just lots of relatively small, strange things constantly happening. My parents even resorted to getting a local priest in to bless the house. He turned up with a Bible, some crosses to place around the house, and some holy water. After he had done what he needed to do, everything seemed to quieten down for a few months. Then my dad noticed that there was something wrong with the house and got a surveyor in, who said we had a problem with some sort of the foundations and would have to move out for a month for some remedial work to be carried out. Now I remember that as soon as we moved out and into the hotel that the insurance company had arranged for us, I suddenly started to experience strong abdominal pains. I was taken into hospital for tests and pain relief. I was finally diagnosed with abdominal migraines, which I'd never experienced before. I think I was about 7 at the time. After a week, I was discharged back to the hotel with my parents and sister with pain relief. The pains continued until we moved back into the house, when they stopped and never returned again. Now, when I said earlier that it wasn't like movies such as Poltergeist, it did come close on one occasion. I recall a few weeks after we moved back into the house being in bed in my bedroom, when I suddenly heard my mum scream in panic my dad's name. "Mike! Mike!" And then she screamed, "Oh my God!" I jumped out of my bed, went out of my bedroom and rushed downstairs. I walked into the living room and believed what I saw. My dad was sat in his chair in the corner of the lounge, frothing from the mouth, with his head twisting right round to one side as far back as it would go, and then twisting right round to the other side as far back as it would go. I remember thinking if his head twisted further back he'd break his neck. My mum called the ambulance and it soon arrived. Back in those days you didn't have to wait long for an ambulance to arrive. My mum got a good neighbour to stay with me and my sister. She went in the ambulance with my dad to hospital. The doctors carried out tests and put it down to my dad having an epileptic fit. He had no history of epilepsy or fits. He never fitted again after that incident. After that, my parents approached the same priest as the last time and requested a further blessing of the house. A few weeks later, the priest attended with his usual things to carry out a blessing, holy water, Bible. Didn't need crosses this time because there were still crosses up around the house. Anyway, he only got halfway around the house this time when the cross was flung off the nail it was hanging on the wall and almost hit him in the face. He left very quickly and refused to never return again to the house. Now, you are all probably saying, well, didn't you just put the house up for sale and move out? Well, my parents tried. We moved into the house when I was 3 and we eventually sold it and moved out when I was around 12. But my parents put the house up for sale around 4 years after we moved in, and it took a further 5 years before they eventually sold the house. We ended up spending a total of 9 years living in that house. Then it came to the day we were due to move out. My parents had sold the house and decided, due to my mum's deteriorating health, to relocate to the coast. Their plan was simple. They had sold the house, all the furniture would go to storage, we would take our caravan to a local caravan site and live there for that Christmas, because we moved out in mid-December. Then we would take the caravan down to a site in mid-January near the southwest coast and stay there until we found somewhere to buy and move into. The day we were due to move out came and the large removal van we had hired broke down before it even got to us. So they had to send 2 smaller vans instead. That delayed moving out. Once all the furniture had been packed and the 2 vans had finally gone, we were outside the front of the house as my dad connected the caravan to the car's tow hitch. We had an estate Volvo at the time and the back door to the car was open. Our dog, Sue, was still in the house and my dad was connecting the caravan to the car. Suddenly there was this blood-curdling howl and our dog came running out of the house, dived into the back of the car and lay down, physically shaking. We all just looked at each other. My dad said to my mum, "Shut that front door and let's get out of here." We finally got to pull off the drive and down the road, got a few hundred yards and then this strange noise started coming from the back of the car, between the car and the caravan. We pulled over and my dad got out. Despite doing the clamp up tight, the jockey wheel had come loose and dropped down. My dad resecured it and we got to the campsite about 10 miles away without any further incidents. Now, the house was on a road that had a set of woods on either end of it, and not long after we moved out of the house, archaeologists started to excavate both the sets of woods, suspecting that they were both Roman camps. It then transpired that they suspected that the Roman road that had linked the 2 woods ran directly behind the house we had lived in. Now, I'm not sure how deep the builders had to dig to sort out the foundations of the house, but they never reported seeing anything when they carried out the digging to sort the foundations out. But my mum did say that the Roman soldiers she saw were from the waist up, so I can only surmise that the Roman road was slightly deeper than the builders had dug. Anyway, have any of you out there got any good paranormal stories or experiences that you'd like to share with us? If so, please get in touch by emailing us at clubmapproductions@mail.com. That's lowercase, all one word, clubmapproductions@mail.com. Let us know your experiences and stories of the paranormal. Well, that's all for now. Thanks so much for watching and we hope that you'll tune in next month for the next paranormal show. Is there anybody out there? For further information of future shows in this series and for other shows by Club Map Productions, please check out our website www.clubmapproductions.co.uk. Thanks again and goodbye for now.